Hi guys, so today I want to talk to you about a tool that I have been using to help increase self-awareness. It's something that I have used to coach people in terms of not just understanding themselves on a deeper level. So there's no self-development without self-awareness. Alright, so those of you who are familiar with Mbti, Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, you would know the 16 personalities, maybe far more than what is MBTI, but actually in the space now, you would see that on social media, people are even introducing themselves. Apart from their name, they also introduce their MBTI type. Essentially, what MBTI is just a personality type. There are many personality assessment tools out there, however, MBTI is something that I was very much into for the longest time. If you actually got my Udemy course, you would know that a lot of my inspiration came from Carl Jung, you know, depth psychology, and a lot of the YouTube influencers who are talking about psychology. This is my realm, you know. I'm very much into personality as a whole, and so I want to talk about specifically the MBTI tool that I have been using for self-awareness. Now, if you already know your MBTI type because you have gone to 16personalities.com to find that out, it is not entirely wrong. Well, at least that's how I first came to know about personality type. You know, when people start talking about this, oh, I am a ENFJ, and you're like, ooh, what is that? You know, so that's how I got to know, because 16personalities.com is a free assessment. The report are extremely lengthy, but I must mention 16 personalities because this is how I got to know and how I got into personality, the whole topic of it on a deeper level. And then I went for my MBTI certification course. So I still have to thank this for it. It's just that, a disclaimer, this has nothing to do with MBTI. The official assessment is not the same, and so of course I'm going to advocate for doing the proper assessment. There is a reason why they come up with those set of questions, the way it's done, the way it's administered, and the way the report is laid out. It's done in a way where it's backed by a lot of research validity and reliability, and so again, we can get into a debate about this. I know that talking about this on YouTube, I can probably cause some people to challenge me, but it's okay. I'm still going to recommend something that I personally gain a lot of benefit from, including the people that I've coached. So this tool is actually one of the assessment, the report from the official MBTI. Now, if you go to their website, I will link all of this below. So as you hear me talking, you need some references. If you go to the website, there are many tools and even assessments, reports that you can do to find out more about yourself, whether it's leadership. There's really a lot. It's just that the one that I'm narrowing in, it's the Step 1 and Step 2 report, particularly the Step 2 report. So the Step 1 report essentially to me, it's like an overview. It kind of gives you a good introduction to MBTI and a good introduction to the preferences. So when I say preferences, these are your 4 letters, right? Whether you're E, I, you're S, N, T, F, or JP. So these are preferences. The preferences came from the assessment that you took. Step 1 is not my focus, but if you're very new to MBTI and you kind of think that having a lot of complex details and you don't really got a lot of time to refer to lengthy reports, although the treasure is in lengthy report, right? So step 1 is always like a good start. But step 2 is where the real value is. So this is my personal experience after using it for a while now, after coaching some clients and getting them to maybe get into a reflective state, get into a mode where they are more aware of their strength and their blind spots. I think these are all very empowering knowledge or tool. I want to talk a little bit about the Step 2 report. And for those of you who are unaware of it, this at least gives you some insight on whether or not you really want to pay that amount to get the step 2 report. To be honest, it's not expensive. It is, honestly, it's way more affordable than your blood test. Okay, sorry, I don't mean to compare it to a blood test. It's just that, you know, people like to do all these checkups, you know, like they do their blood work and then they like to check on their weight, their body composition. They go for like, you know, what's that thing, DEXA scan, they spend a few $100s knowing their physical side, but don't you want to know what's going on inside your head? Okay, so give it a chance, right? After the video, you can conclude all you want, but allow me to share what are some of the benefits that I've gotten from understanding the use of Step 2 report. It's a more advanced or a detailed version of Step 1 where in each of the preferences that makes up your type, that makes up your 4 letters, right? Each of the preference or letter actually have 5 facets in it. So what do I mean by facets? This is how I've interpreted it during the course that I've attended. Facets appears to me like dimension, right? It's like you go into a room, in order for you to make the room, to like summarize what this room is all about or what the shape of the room is, like what makes this room the particular way that it is. There are walls, there are certain angles that makes up what this room is all about. So I see it as dimension. MBTI calls it facets. And so there are more than 5 facets. It's just that I think, if I can recall, they have only shortlisted 5 for digestibility is one thing. I think it's more relevant, and I think it's a little bit more obvious and closely tied to that particular preference. So I'm going to show you some examples so that you have a clearer idea on what I mean. Oh, but before I do that, these facets are quite important because I don't know about you, but if you know people around you who have also taken the test, I shouldn't be using the word test. Actually, there's a proper term that they use in MBTI, which is assessment, right? Because it's technically not a test. Because when you take a test, you would fail or you would pass. But essentially speaking, this personality assessment is for you to assess yourself. Okay, so how Step 2 is going to make sense is that I'm sure there are moments where you encounter people around you who have taken the assessments as well. And then you find out that, oh, you guys are the same type, you know, like you have technically the same identical 4 letters, right? But then there are moments where, you know, obviously if you are quite impressed with that person and have a lot of similarities with the person, you'll be like, ooh, you feel a little bit flattered, right? And then you have this commonality. Maybe you will start having like halo effect. You start liking the person because similarities attract. Well, opposite attracts too, but that's another point. My point is, you will come to a point where you meet another type that is the same as you, but then the way they act, the way they perceive information, it's just there are certain differences that makes you wonder, how come we are the same type? When you start understanding your type, you will start going to YouTube, like started reading up about like your type, really wanting to understand yourself. People like to do that, which is why I think understanding yourself is I think one of the top search, you know, is that people really want to discover themselves. And then when you get to knowing yourself more and more, right? And then you just like couldn't resonate with some of the things that they say, that they do, or their backgrounds. Okay, so the facets is going to give you insights as to why your MBTI type functions in a particular way, what makes you unique. Because after all, yes, we have a framework to group people into preferences and types. However, I believe that because we have nature and nurture, we can also function quite differently and individualistically. And so this Step 2 report is going to give you all the little nuances, the little details. So if you are a nerd like me and you really want to know the details, I think this is going to be really useful. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples. If you look at the extroversion and introversion facet, so each preference is extroversion, the other preference is introversion. So they are polarity, they are the opposite of each other. in each preference, there are 5 facets, right? These are the 5 facets that you will see in the Step 2 report when you do this assessment. So you will see that initiating, expressive, gregarious, active, and enthusiastic makes up the extroversion. Whereas for introversion, it's receiving, contained. It's literally the opposite of extroversion's facets: intimate, reflective, and quiet. So I've seen introverted type, you know, they have I in their 4 letters. You would see that, okay, majority of the facets, their rating, it falls within the preference. It's in preference. So this is another keyword that is being used in the report. In preference means that, okay, the way I see it is like, it's kind of like a stereotype. It's kind of like saying that as a person who prefers introversion, you would normally be more contained, intimate, reflective, quiet, receiving, right? But then sometimes you will see things that are mid-zone or like out of preference, right? So it depends on how you view this. This is when I get to know types that have unique qualities about them that, you know, doesn't allow people to just stereotype them the way they are. For example, I would see like a ISTJ that in their 5 facets of I would be very much in preference, but then maybe one of the facets, instead of reflective, not just mid-zone, but towards out of preference. So then this becomes like, you know, I've seen it real life, obviously, like some of the ISTJs that they supposedly cannot stand a lot of noise, they need a lot of isolation, concentration. But then for some reason, this ISTJ is learned in an active environment, is able to participate and appears like an extrovert, because for the active facet, they are actually closer to the active facet rather than reflective. And then when you interview them, they say that for some reason, when they have to learn, if they are too reflective, it becomes very boring, they don't learn as much, and then they learn along the way that when they are more active, they actually learn a lot more and they are more hands-on. So this is, I think, what makes the facets really quite interesting. So at least you know, like, oh, am I really in preference? Am I like mid-zone? Or I do have facets that are out of preference. Okay, now moving on to the second preference pair, which is sensing and intuition. So concrete, abstract, realistic, imaginative, practical, conceptual, experiential, theoretical, and finally traditional and original. So I fall under, you know, the abstract way more than concrete. So because I know that I love delving into theories, into like possibilities, into like things that maybe it has not been proven yet. It's the artistic or the creative side of me, I like to say, that I prefer to come up with concepts or talk about concepts, because these are all like possibilities, right? So I really enjoy that kind of work and conversations. When I took the assessment, my report turned out to be that I'm extremely abstract. So this is when I start to become a little bit more reflective. Not just my personal life, but my professional, at a workplace, my career. Like I start to think about, like, is being abstract helping me in my role at work? There's so many different circumstances and situations, which is why I think having all this knowledge, it gives you power, because you're constantly very aware of your environment and how you interact with it. So during certain situations where people expect me to be creative, to be out of the box, to be unconventional, when I become extremely abstract, where I'm in the flow, I actually don't need a lot of energy to be abstract. I can go on, and it's very much appreciated. It is what people see my strength. And I think back then when I was still doing designing, the abstractness actually helped me a lot to produce a lot of unpredictable ideas. I could do that through this abstract facet in my N or intuition preference. However, it reached a point in time when I'm working with teams, I have to delegate, I have to give directions, trying to actualize my concepts and make it realistic. This is when I realized that I need to put more effort and practice to be more concrete. When I have an idea, a concept, I need to make sure that I verify, I do enough research to make sure that it's done somewhere, or at least try it out and make it practical, or at least try to come up with the how-to, what is, instead of just talking about what if, or what could be. So what if, what could be, a very intuition, abstract, imaginative kind of element. But then the people who actually get things done and make it come into reality are the senses. But then for those of you who are extremely at the far end of sensing type, so for example, maybe one of your facets, you found out that you are totally practical, right? It's not a bad thing. Actually, a lot of people are looking for practicality. People want to make things work, right? This is how you actually see result. It's just that sometimes when you are too practical, it also makes it very boring. Like, you will only do things that has been proven before, so you will never come up with anything innovative, or maybe it's going to be hard for you to problem solve or come up with new ideas. Okay, so the next preference pair, which is the thinking and the feeling preference. So what are the facets? You have logical, empathetic, you have reasonable, compassionate, you have questioning, accommodating, critical, accepting, tough, and tender. So now at least you know that, okay, feeling doesn't just mean that I make decisions based on my feeling. They think that, oh, because you're F-type, right, you cannot make tough decisions. Well, technically it's true in some instances. It's just that, but these are the people who actually care about the harmony in the long run. Like, it really depends on situation. You cannot be either or. So this is a decision-making function. Therefore, my conclusion is that trying to balance this out is going to work in your favor, especially in today's time. So to give you an example on, what I've seen when it comes to the questioning and accommodating, right? I can't go through all the facets because this would be like a 2-hour video. But if you're interested to learn more about each of the facets, maybe I will do like mini videos. So for questioning and accommodating, so questioning is obviously the thinking type that would normally demonstrate this. Because for them, it's all about finding the objective truth. It's all about asking questions till you get the bottom line of things. And so sometimes when they're unaware, they think that asking a lot of questions is like me being smart, me being effective, productive, all the competent words, right? Like, because I'm asking a lot of questions, it means that, I know what I'm doing, and I need to know all this information. Sometimes when you work with types that are, the F types, so they prefer the feeling function, you will come off as very, not just critical, you come off very tough, you come off as somebody very intimidating, you kind of like interrogate them and ask them a lot of questions. You might give people the impression that you don't trust the situation, maybe you appear too demanding, and it just makes you look so bossy that people don't like you. On the other hand, if you are too accommodating, you will end up being afraid of asking questions or avoid conflict. Maybe you are in a work discussion and somebody says something that you think is not. You would be accommodating because you don't want to hurt their feelings, you don't want to look disrespectful, so you accommodate. And then when you overdo it, it looks like you don't stand for yourself. Or maybe you don't ask enough questions, you end up like regretting later because you don't have enough information, because you don't dare to ask. So I think, okay, my point of saying this is not that, you're going to take the assessment until you reach like mid-zone for all your report, right? I guess my point of saying this is that if you notice that your report show that you are more critical, more questioning, perhaps you want to reflect on your personal life, your professional life, and really ask yourself, like, in what work situation that this worked out well for you and why? And then what kind of facets actually help you to do that? If everything is working in your favor, you are not hurting anyone, and you feel good about it, and you are achieving your goals, nobody is there to tell you that it's wrong. It's just that I think because we're in this journey of trying to develop ourselves, there's always something to improve on, isn't it? So I think it's just really the awareness of it and knowing when to use it to really enhance it, to optimize it, or to actually downplay it and maybe flex. We use this term flex because essentially it just means that, oh, it's not really your preference, it's not your facet, but then it doesn't mean that you can't do it. You just need to kind of like flex a little bit more, you know, exert more energy in order to do that. Okay, now the last preference pair is judging and perceiving. So here are the facets. So you have systematic, casual, you have planful versus open-ended, you have early starting versus pressure prompted, you have scheduled and then spontaneous, and finally methodical and emergent. Funnily, you know, I know what my in-preference facets are, but there are moments when, you know, I realize that although I'm that particular preference, but it doesn't mean that I don't enjoy or like need to use a lot of energy doing that. So this is where it becomes like you really can't stereotype people. Okay, now I kind of have this gray area opinion about stereotyping. Stereotyping can be used in a good way sometimes. It's just that as much as we say, oh, don't stereotype people, but actually we are stereotyping. So I think we might as well just admit that. It's just the level of you stereotyping. Are you stereotyping based on nothing, or you are stereotyping based on informed understanding? Now, I just want to read to you about the methodical versus emergent. So the description that I have here is that it says methodical tends to organize everything needed to complete a project, from materials to people, and create a sequence for the completion of tasks that lead to a project completion in a planned and strategic fashion. That's the methodical. That is a super J type. And then the emergent, which is under the perceiving preference, tends to enjoy problem solving on the fly through improvisation and a lack of planning. So if you are wondering who are the people who design all the IKEA instructional guides, it is probably a J. Okay, now I took this actually from the Mbti trainer who coached me through the certification. I think that was hilarious because, yeah, I've seen certain types, because obviously I could pretty much type them. When they see instructional guide, if you see that they get turned on with the fact that there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like step by step, and then they ask you, what is it? How is it done? It's so obvious. Okay, so in this manner, if you look at methodical versus emergent, there are pros and cons. Again, anything that is overdone, it's not always a good thing. So I think there is some kind of like, we call it bias, is it? Well, people prefer methodical because people want to see how it's actually going to get done. Like, people feel secure knowing that there's methodology, there's a way of doing things. But then, you know, if you're too methodical, you are so rigid, right? But sometimes things change, weather change, maybe you plan for a picnic, but then it starts raining. Like, okay, well, usually the J type would say, I have plan A, B, C, and D, right? But the emergent type, you know, the downside is that if they are too emergent, they tend to have this like option paralysis. You know, they have way too many like ideas and options that they paralyze themselves, and then they don't know which really is the best one to go with, because they become like totally distracted, like, oh no, but option C is so good, but then option B is, so that can have its downfall as well. And so I think knowing the right time, knowing when to use the facets is going to help you in the long run. But then before you can apply all this, to take the step 2 assessment, digest your report, and at least do some reflection, take it one step at a time. For me, I think this has opened up a whole new world for me. I thought that, you know, after understanding my 4 letters, that is what it is. But then when I got to know the step 2 report, obviously things became a little bit more interesting. It became a little bit more concrete, because apart from the facets itself, it actually explains to you how you manifest or how you demonstrate the facets. There is a portion in the report that also gives you the strategies and the techniques in order for you to kind of overcome some of the interpersonal challenges or the differences that you have, which is why I think this report is where the real value is. Okay guys, so I hope that this gave you some insights on how I actually use the Step 2 report from the official MBTI. This is one of the tools that I refer to, and it has really given me a lot of perspective. I think if you're in the same mindset or journey as me, where you're about growth, you're about self-development, you're about being self-aware and knowing how to regulate yourself through making conscious choices, taking the right actions, or at least, even if you don't take the right actions, at least you are quite informed about it and you're willing to be accountable for it. Like, all of these things are like, you know, someone with a strong mindset is resilient, you know, someone that has high emotional intelligence. I think we all generally strive and aim for that. So this can be a very powerful tool for you to heighten your self-awareness. Okay guys, so if you found this video useful, please help me like, share. If you have not subscribed to me, I hope you consider. I do intend and I committed myself to posting on a weekly basis. Apart from psychology, fashion, I also share some of the things that, you know, really is up in the alley of self-development. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.